right now, this exact moment. The birds outside your window are talking about you. Not about the weather, not about the cat 2 doors down, not about the hawk that passed through this morning. About you, specifically, by name, not in words you would recognize, but in a language precise enough that every bird within 50 feet of your yard knows exactly who you are. And here is the part that most people never find out. That conversation has been happening every single day since the first moment a bird in your yard laid eyes on you. Every time you stepped outside. Every time you filled the feeder. Every time you slammed a door or moved too fast or sat quietly on the porch doing nothing at all. The birds were narrating it. You have been the subject of a conversation you did not know existed, in a language you were never told about, and what they have been saying, what they have concluded about you after all this time, is something most people find genuinely difficult to hear, because it is not always flattering, and it is never wrong. In our last video, we covered what crows know about your face, how they remember it for years, teach it to their offspring, and track your movements before you even step outside. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand something about the yard outside your door that will permanently change the way you listen to it. Most people think of bird sound as background, pleasant, seasonal, something that fills the morning air before the world gets loud. That is not what bird sound is. Bird sound is one of the most sophisticated communication systems on the planet. Layered, structured, referential, and capable of conveying specific information about specific things in the external world. A chickadee alarm call is not just an alarm. It is a sentence. Research published in the journal Science demonstrated that black-capped chickadees encode at least 3 distinct pieces of information into a single alarm call. Other birds, nuthatches, titmice, vireos eavesdrop on those calls and respond accordingly, even though they have never learned to produce them themselves. What this means is that your yard is not a place where birds make sounds. It is a place where birds speak. And you, the person who fills the feeder and moves through the yard and sits on the porch, are one of the primary subjects of that conversation. The question is not whether the birds are talking about you. They are. The question is what they are saying. The very first thing birds communicate about a specific person is the simplest and the most important. Safe or not safe. Research from the University of Vienna found that birds can categorize a specific human as safe or threatening within seconds of observing them, not minutes, seconds. They are reading your posture, your pace, your gaze direction, and your behavioral patterns simultaneously, and the verdict they reach is immediately broadcast. When you step into your yard and a chickadee produces a soft contact call, it is not singing to you. It is telling every other bird in the area that you are there, and that you are okay. When you step into your yard and the birds go silent, when the feeder empties and the branches clear, they are saying, unknown, uncertain, wait and see. The difference between those two responses is the difference between a yard that feels alive when you step into it, and a yard that feels like it is holding its breath. Most people never realize they have been assessed. Most people never realize there was a verdict. But there was. There always is. And every bird in your neighborhood knows what it was. When birds have classified a specific human as genuinely safe, not just neutral, not just harmless, but trusted, the way they speak changes. Not just the volume, not just the frequency, the content. When a trusted human was present in a yard, the birds produced sentry calls at significantly reduced rates. They stopped posting guards. You were not a variable they had to monitor. You were part of the structure, part of the safe world. Certain birds, particularly chickadees and titmice, produce a set of soft sounds that they use almost exclusively within their own family groups. Field ornithologists have documented these sounds being directed toward specific humans after extended periods of positive interaction. The bird is not confused about what you are. It knows you are not a chickadee, but it has placed you in a category that its biology only uses for the closest relationships it forms. It is talking to you the way it talks to its family, whether you were listening or not. Now here is the part I promised at the beginning. The thing I have never heard discussed anywhere else. There is a third category of communication that most people miss entirely because it does not sound like what they expect bird communication to sound like. It sounds like nothing. There is a specific silence that happens in a yard when a person who is genuinely, deeply known steps outside. Not the silence of threat. That is a different silence, tighter, sharper. It is the silence of recognition, of something settling, of a system that was running at a certain level of alert, simply dropping that alert. Researchers who have spent long hours in yards with deeply familiar birds describe it as a palpable shift. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of a different quality of sound, softer, slower, more continuous. When you step outside on a morning, when you have been consistent and calm and present for a long time, and the yard does something you can feel but struggle to describe. You are not imagining it, you are hearing the birds say your name in the only language they have. And what they are saying is, you belong here. This yard knows you, and we are glad you came out. The conversation about you does not stay in your yard. Bird communication networks extend well beyond the boundaries of any single garden. Mixed species flocks move through neighborhoods and overlapping territories. Information about specific humans, their identity, their classification, their reputation moves through these networks the same way any other information does. The Crow study from the University of Washington documented this with uncomfortable precision. A specific human's threat classification spread through a local crow population that eventually numbered in the hundreds. Birds who had never personally encountered the person were already responding to them before they arrived. The information had traveled. The verdict had spread. The birds in your immediate yard are not the only birds who know about you. The birds in your neighbor's yard know about you. The birds in the park 2 blocks away may know about you. Your reputation was built from the accumulation of every ordinary morning, every quiet moment at the feeder, every time you moved slowly or moved fast. You have a reputation with the birds of your neighborhood. The only question is what it says. The thing that gives me the most hope about all of this, and the thing I most want you to hear, is that the file is not closed. Birds update their classifications. The language they speak about you is not fixed. It responds to new information, and new information is something you can provide. Calm, slow, predictable presence near birds over time shifts the classification. You do not need to be extraordinary. You do not need special equipment or rare knowledge. You need to show up quietly, consistently, without agenda. Fill the feeder at the same time each day. Move slowly when birds are near. Sit outside without your phone for 10 minutes in the morning. Let them see you being still. Let them file away that you are not a threat. Let them update the entry. Let the new information move through the network. Within weeks, sometimes days, for species like chickadees that are highly curious, you will hear the language begin to change. The alarm calls will decrease. The soft contact notes will increase. The birds will begin to move closer without flushing. They will start saying something different about you, to each other, to the birds in the neighboring yards, to the next generation of birds that will spend the summer in your trees. What they say will outlast you in ways that are genuinely difficult to comprehend. The reputation you build with the birds in your yard this year will still be moving through the local population long after you have stopped thinking about it. That is not a small thing. That is a relationship with the living world that most people never know they could have. There is a moment, if you have been patient and quiet and present long enough, when you step outside on an ordinary morning and the yard does something different. The birds do not scatter. They do not go silent in that tight, uncertain way. They carry on. A chickadee hops closer along its branch. A cardinal on the fence post turns to face you, but does not flush. And somewhere in that moment, if you are paying attention, you realize something. The yard has been speaking all along, every morning, every season, in a language you were never taught, but were always capable of hearing. You were just never told to listen. Now, you know the language exists. Now, you know what some of it means. And the next time you step outside and the birds carry on as if your presence is simply part of the world they live in, you will know exactly what they are saying. They are saying, We know you. You are safe here. You belong to this place. And that after everything is the most extraordinary thing a wild creature can say about a human being. Before I go, I want to ask you something real. Has there ever been a moment in your yard when the birds did something that stopped you? A morning when the sound of the yard felt different. When something moved closer than it should have. When a bird looked at you and something in you went completely still. Tell me about it in the comments. What happened? What bird it was? What you were doing when it happened? Because this community has shared some of the most moving stories I have ever read. And I read every single one. If this video put words to something you have always felt, but never been able to explain, share it with someone. Because someone in your life has been standing in their yard listening to birds their whole life without knowing they were being talked about. And if you want to know what else your birds have been keeping from you, subscribe. We post new videos every few days, and every single one will change something about the way you see the world just outside your door. The link to our last video, What Crows Know About Your Face, is right here. Watch that next. Because what we covered there and what we covered today are two pieces of the same extraordinary story. Thank you for being here at Wild Bird Mind. I will see you in the next one.